All right, everyone. Showtime. Bring it in. Troops. Quarantine from home show. Jarod Hector is the star of Fridays, and he's on the road.
On the road.
You want to disclose
Indeed.
where you are, Jarod?
Yeah, I can disclose. I am in the foothills of the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. You know, socially distancing, staying away from people because, you know, there's still a pandemic going on, people. And here's my mask just in case somebody decides to get close.
That's good. Mask at the ready. From where
Always.
you're sitting, can you see anyone who might come close?
No. No.
Okay. David Thorpe is here, and that's Duke and Benjamin Aronson, who will be joining us after 9 by 90. I hope we get as much Duke as possible because he's always great. His takes on sports media are strong. Okay.
Randy, yes, the capitalist machine are playing the Poconos, my friends. We are here for one night only, but it's going to be a hell of a show.
It's going to be a hell of a show. All right, 9 by 90 time. Jarod, you are kicking us off whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so the NBA bubble, it's happening and it's there. And one of the things that I want to talk about is ESPN's sort of coverage of it. And in full disclosure, I'm going to be talking about Malika Andrews, not like just specifically about her, but she is front and center in this whole ESPN coverage. And Judy's going to play a little bit of Malika talking
those
right
concerns
now.
Are very real because this is a monumental undertaking that has never been done before. But the way that this bubble is supposed to be built is that it's supposed to be able to withstand a handful of positive tests. And Adam Silver has always said that if there were to be a large group of players that were to test positive, then that might cause them to have to shut down. But that's what they're trying to avoid.
Okay.
And what he's
So for me, and in full disclosure, Malika is some cross between a colleague, friend, and acquaintance. I love the fact that she's there and she's getting all this screen time, and she is, I mean, if you look at anything on ESPN, Malika is the one who is out there and who's constantly up. But there's a weird way in which ESPN is sort of reporting on itself, right? Where it's like, oh, look at Malika going to get tested. Oh, look, she's doing this. She's doing that. Now she's doing this thing. And it's a very strange sort of process. And I'm not sure what it means or how I feel about it. What I do hope ultimately, of course, is number one, that she's okay. That you see her showing off some of the gear that she has, that she maintains her health and that she's able to parlay that into, you know, whenever her next deal is up, that she's able to be like, hey, remember that time I was in a bubble during a pandemic for you guys? Yeah. So that's that.
Okay, so for mine, Judy, listen closely to Coach Sweeney from Clemson. Maybe. This is 4 years old.
And I think a lot of the things in this world and everything that's so bad and this world's falling apart, you know, some of these people need to move to another country. Some of them need to move to another country. I think that a lot of the things in this world were only a dream for Martin Luther King. Not a one-term, but a two-term African-American president. And this is a terrible country. That was a dream for Martin Luther King. I got interracial marriages. I go to a church that's an interracial church. Those are only dreams for Martin Luther King.
Dear God.
So that's 4 years old, but it's a reminder that there are two sides here to be on. That guy's on the wrong side. And I think 4 years ago, we were able, me included, I didn't really follow college football closely, and I'm not sure I could recognize him in a lineup of three people, but he was pretty famous, and this guy said that, and he's still coaching now. It's stunning to me, but understand that is the problem when people like that are in major positions of power with that kind of thinking. That
dude is responsible for, in many ways, shepherding young men. That is a problem.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Okay, here we go. Incredible story from Tom Haberstroh. I think the best story on the coronavirus in the NBA that I've seen yet. I'm going to start reading. Dozens of hospitals across the state have maxed out their ICU capacity. Locally in Orlando, it's dire. As of Thursday morning, 2 local Advent Health hospitals ICUs, Advent Health East Orlando and Advent Health Winter Park, have reached full capacity, with 39 total beds filled, according to data from the Agency for Healthcare Administration. The largest Advent Health hospital in the area, Advent Health Orlando, is at 80% ICU capacity, with only 40 of its 191 beds open. Overall, Orange County hospitals are at 83%. Just as NBA players are flying into Orlando, hospitals are being pushed to the brink, Advent Health included. If the on-site clinic can't handle an NBA-related emergency, does the NBA feel comfortable about taking a bed from someone in the general public? It's not so much that everybody who gets COVID is going to die from it, Rasmussen says, is that when the hospitals are overwhelmed and there's no place for people to go, more people are going to die that wouldn't have necessarily died otherwise. If you have more people dying because they can't get an ICU bed, because they were in a car accident, or they can't get on a ventilator because they had a severe asthma attack or bacterial pneumonia, then you're going to see a lot of other deaths, not because of COVID, but because the hospital system being strained to the breaking point. That's really, really scary. That's an expert talking. Think about NBA games. People go to the hospital all the time, right? There's an ambulance at every NBA game, and they're going to have an on-site clinic. We don't know its capabilities, but this is really scary, right? This is really scary for Florida. This is really scary for the NBA. I don't love their answer so far on this. Watch this space.
Yeah, for sure.
Good points.
All right. I think my next thing is Joel Embiid showing up to the airport to head on down to the bubble at Orlando. And first of all, the sight of and you guys all know, Joel Embiid is a massive human being.
Huge man.
Like a 7'2" man in a hazmat suit. Like, there are jokes there. Like, that's just funny looking, right? Like, but there is something obviously serious here. And we all know Joel, right? Joel loves to troll. Like, he's quite good at it, right? I don't know if this is a troll per se or if he's actually very much concerned about, this is a little funny. But he's just squeezing himself into this. And we do need some levity and stuff in here, and I love this. And then later you see Kylo Quiddle be laughing at him later in the video, like, because it's hysterical. He's in a hazmat suit. But that should not belie the point that these guys are going into an area that is one of the hot zones in the country for a pandemic that we do not have a vaccine and or a cure for, right? That still matters. And, all the talk on the silly sports talk shows are like Kendrick Perkins saying, well, if Joel Embiid felt that way, he shouldn't go. It's like, all the machismo, tough culture nonsense that we see back and forth. Guys, it is still a pandemic. And like, whether he was trolling or not or trying to be funny, the reality of this is that, and I'll get to this in my next 9 by 90, there are people on the front lines out there who are still dealing with this, and people are dying. So that part is serious.
Can I just add that one thing that unifies the article that Henry brought up and what you're talking about, which is an unspoken pressure about how the league could literally collapse financially if this doesn't happen, and what their paychecks would look like. And while, yes, they are millionaires, and yes, et cetera, most of them have not been millionaires for that long, right? And the pressure of giving up $10 or $12 million is life-changing money, and that is a tough thing to balance when you're being told that, hey, the salary cap could drop by 60% next year, even under current scenario, let alone if nothing happens. And I'm not saying that warrants playing, but I'm saying we do need to acknowledge the type of pressure they are under to play, even personally.
A $10 million salary does not matter if my monthly or my annual expenses are 9 and change or 10 or 11, right? Like, I need that money. So 100%.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later for sure, because I've been talking to players about it. All right, so my second point today, I've never done this before, reference one of Henry's articles, but his what he published yesterday about Ann Kerr. Judy, can you take the share screen off so I can read? My favorite word, of course, is decency. Thank you, Judy. My second favorite word is grace or graciousness, which is defined as pleasantly kind, benevolent, and courteous, characterized by good taste, comfort, ease, for example, a gracious home. Whenever I read Henry, almost always, Judy, you forgot to press start. I'll be quick, though. I'm typically always enamored with
Judy,
Henry's
the clock's
brain.
not running.
I'm typically enamored with Henry's brain and how he tells a story that delights me, and hopefully a lot of other people. But in this particular thing, I just kept thinking about Ann Kerr. And in what we're going through right now, definitely a pandemic with lots of stress in a lot of places, being graceful and having graciousness in our daily goings on and how we deal with people is a great lesson and a great goal for us to try to achieve. And I appreciate, Henry, for you giving us Ann's story, and I know you'll continue to do it because it's inspired me to be more graceful and gracious than my own.
Thank you, David.
Henry, great story. Can you tell Anne that I, in fact, know what a thé dansant is?
Okay, well, all right. So I've spent a lot of my week listening to recordings of Ann Kerr, Steve Kerr's mom, who is the leader we need in these times. Here she is. Look at this. Okay, so part of what we haven't published yet is Ann Kerr saying that the pandemic has some wonderful components. One of which is everybody always says they want to learn how to live in the moment. I talked to her with Charles Bethay, who's a New Yorker writer and a mutual friend, and Charles is a mountain climber, and she was like, Charles, well, you know, when you're climbing a mountain, if you don't live in the moment, you're gonna die. Like, you have to be looking there at this place in this time. She's an 85-year-old woman who swings 30 feet above the air on this thing every day as a little reminder of living in the moment. And so I was thinking about her. This is coming up, her little lessons of the pandemic part of it. But in the middle of that, Judy, do you mind putting up that Adina link? Living in the moment, and then Adina shared this right then, which is, this is a moment, right? Like, Adina knows what's going on with this live in the moment thing. It made me very happy. Anyway, that's all I got to say. Living in the moment. Thank you, Ann Kerr.
That's her wedding, I think, right?
Yeah, that's Adina's wedding.
They're having a good
Which
time.
had its own hashtag, of course.
Of course. So, and we've been paying attention to the news, obviously, and companies all around have been, rushing to make amends. And, all of a sudden we have, Black men and women being made CEOs and CFOs and all these things. And the new head of Simon & Schuster, a publishing company, is a Black woman. And the New Yorker did an interview with her, and I've Chotner, who's does a really good job with these Q&As. Like, you might even know him, Henry, who does
friend of Kevin Arnovitz's.
Yes, friend of Kevin Arnovitz. That's the connection there. And she ran the Pulitzer Committee for the last several years, right? She's been a New York Times Pulitzer winner herself, so she understands balance and journalism and the importance of diversity and voices. And I think this is so important for something like Simon & Schuster, because in a time where facts and books and literature and different things are anybody can just say whatever they want now, and it seems to be this is taken as gospel. It is very important that we have someone like her as the new head of Simon & Schuster. But I encourage all of these companies, it isn't just simply, all right, cool, done our job, Black woman now in charge of X, Y, and Z. No, she needs to have all the authority and decision-making power that a white man in her position would also have, right? Like, she needs to be seen as someone who can work side by side with Jonathan Karp to really make this what it should be. So kudos to Simon & Schuster for that move.
Awesome. Good. Okay. So so just going back, and Judy, you can share that third one. Just as I'm talking, there's no volume that's needed. But this is when you leave dad in charge at bath time. It is a 6 foot or 7 foot or 8 foot tall soap wall where 2 kids are inside the soap wall, and then 2 kids are playing with the soap fully in pajamas. They probably already had their bath. And it's a reminder, again, in the stress that we're dealing with. And I'm not lucky enough to have any more young children. My teens are almost, they'll be 20 in a year. They don't need me as much anymore. But I remember the days when things were tough and stressed, and years ago I had to evacuate us from a hurricane, just 4 years ago. That's our role as dads oftentimes. Sometimes it's moms have to do it. In my house, my wife did everything, all the healing every time our kids were sick and all the schoolwork. Dad's job was to make sure they felt safe. And typically I did it by making them laugh. And so in this time, and I'm doing this now for my parents who are 80 and almost 79. We all have a role to play to help young people feel safe and smile and laugh. Things are going to get ugly for a while. That's what we're talking about with the pandemic and the NBA in Orlando and tests everywhere. And we all know more people now today that are sick than we've ever known before, and we're worried. And so if we can find ways to build 8 foot soap walls, we should look to do it.
That's a genius. Whoever did that, absolute genius. Like, yeah. That you were mentioning the Pulitzer Prize, Jarod. Like, this is who gets it.
Great.
So my last thing is this. I don't know much about football. Does everybody else already know about this? Like, look at this. Like,
yeah.
Look out, coach. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
One is
His
funny.
comeback
This is the dude's full-time
legendary.
job.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
I never saw that.
I have a talk I could give about privilege and how weird you have to be to not be capable of being aware of the referee coming down the sideline who will crush you if you don't step back. Like, that is so weird to me, but I don't want to do that talk. Instead, I just want to say, I love this. Like, what the hell? They had a team meeting and they're like, hey, can you just move me out of the way when 8 times a second I'm about to run and crush somebody? And he's like, yeah, I got you, coach. Don't worry. I'll do that.
That fits into his mystique, though, Henry. Right? McVay is one of these young offensive gurus in the NFL, and it's like, that gets put into his lore about look how committed he is to the game, that he's so focused and laser sharp on the play, he doesn't see what's going on. All that jazz they love to do.
Where does he coach at?
Rams. He's the Rams coach.
Where do the Rams play these days?
L.A.
LA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But that's like, so Judy's got a story about just, white men will run her over in train stations, like, because they don't
Not
see
anymore.
her. Hi, Judy. Like, this is that guy, right? It has to be that guy. He literally can't see people around him. Like, what the fuck?
He's super focused. Jarod's right. That is the narrative, I'm sure. I don't watch the games, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Look how
that's
focused
how it
he
goes.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Just extremely sloppy with where he puts his body. Like, extremely.
He has been dubbed more than once a genius. He is a genius, football genius.
Well, there's one other thought that occurs to me is Ethan Sherwood-Strauss wrote one of my favorite stories of all time years and years ago, about an NBA player in the closing minutes of a playoff game, Rockets Sonics. That's how long ago it was, and I'm blanking right now who the player was. Maybe it'll come to me as I tell the story. This really happened, and almost nobody knows it happened. It's literally the closing minutes of a close playoff game, and a player gets up off the bench and illegally enters the game, and the Rockets had 6 players for like a 9-second play that actually was a game-deciding play, but he ended up like not being part of it. And George Karl remembers it. Everyone and they're like, yeah, it was freaking weird. The refs didn't call anything, and they're just like, and then he went and sat back down. And then Ethan went and found him like, what were you thinking? He was like, I was just so excited. Like, I was just so like.
That happens all the time in middle school and high school JV basketball. It does. You don't see it in the NBA.
You just get up. You're like, oh my God, I got to get in here.
I know. They're gonna need me. That's what they're gonna need. Like, yeah. I love that story. And there's that movie, Radio.
Yeah.
What's that movie called?
With Cuba Gooding?
Yeah, I think it's called Radio.
Radio, yeah.
Radio. Yeah. Anyway, Ben Aronson is here, and you're here with a purpose. And it's not just to show us your guns.
No, they told me that it was Thursday Thorpe. So, but it's Friday. So I came unfortunately prepared just for Thorpe. But
I had BBs, my man. BBs, not guns. I had a BB or two, maybe.
Tank top Thorpe.
Yes, that's true.
No, so listen, I came here because I've been really struggling with the DeSean Jackson stuff for the past 3 days. And to set it up very briefly, I was a kid. I grew up Jewish in a Jewish home, but kind of rebelled against being Jewish for years. Like, just was like, why are we acting like we are oppressed? The Holocaust was so long ago. Like to me, it was just like I've got a good home. Like, this stuff is overkill. And my family wasn't even that religious. They were just cultural, right?
Yeah.
And I tried to distance myself from it for years. And ironically, when I got a scholarship to an elite prep school, I actually felt more connected to the people of color than to the white people, many of whom were Jewish, but also very wealthy, right? And so that kind of furthered my development as a person who saw oppression far more in communities of color. And then as I got older, communities of LGBTQ and other areas where it's in our face right now. People are dying right now. And so I became a very active voice. And, when people like Jamel Hill started standing up in the sports world, and then LeBron, I gravitated towards it. And I was inspired by it to become even more vocal, not just somebody who in my office made sure that we had diversity or said in advertising, like, hey, that's cultural appropriation, or that's not necessarily the right way to handle that ad. But I became somebody who who went to social media about it, went to charity about it, went to do these things. And I think that in doing so, around the time of Charlottesville, when people were marching, I think I simultaneously found a subtle reconnection to my Jewish heritage, right? And my grandmother, who died last year on Thanksgiving, used to always tell me, no matter what you think you are, just remember they're always going to think of you as Jewish. They see it in your blood, right? It's not your choice. In the Holocaust, it didn't matter if you actually even wanted to side with the Germans or work with, you were just a Jew. And eventually your time was going to come. And so I think I just expected that, hey, the prominent issue right now is Black Lives Matter. That's what's more important right now. There's not people coming for Jews left and right. So, but if it happened, like Charlottesville, when Jamel was like, your president's a white supremacist. And I was like, hell yeah, yes, he is. And then when something happened with, DeSean Jackson and DeSean Jackson, I was like, all right, they're ignorant, but where's the commentary, right? Where is the support? And it was really slow to come. And from certain people, it didn't come at all. And my problem with that is, as I spoke to a lot of different people in the sports media world, minority people, people of gay and lesbian identification, their feedback was, well, these conspiracies are not that uncommon in our communities, but we blow them off as just ignorant. They're stupid. Like, there's no reason to address it. And then also it was, well, DeSean Jackson is not the appointed moral compass of Black Lives Matter. We don't need to address it. And I said, but there are tens of thousands of people liking it. There are pro athletes, Kevin Durant, and others liking it, commenting, preach. By not saying anything, you empower the idea that the conspiracy theories are true, or you allow for people to condemn you as hypocritical on the right, which then allows them to say that Black Lives Matter, see, it's just a hate group. And so to me, I really felt, probably improperly so, hurt by really what I felt was just like the lack of just a simple tweet from a real lot of people who have chosen to be the vocal minority, who have chosen to put themselves in the center of the sports world fighting for equality. And I don't know whether it was they didn't want to attack somebody who's right now a face of the Black Lives Matter movement because they felt like it would distract from it. I can understand that. I don't want the Black Lives Matter movement to become deprioritized. Maybe it was because it's not their issue and they weren't educated on it. Okay. But he did think he was quoting Hitler and did say some stuff which were just like very easy to just be like, that stuff ain't right. But there's a third possibility that's really scary, and that's that they believe it, that Jews are the architect of exploitation and oppression. And by not saying anything, it scared me for a minute. Like, it scared me for who am I putting my faith in to lead the kind of moral causes that I believe in? And I'm not going to step away from Black Lives Matter because that is real. Those people are dying daily. They're held back without cause from exceeding in life. But at the same token, I do know we have a history of trading one marginalized group for another. And it is really easy to just turn this into the next group is back to being Jews. And I don't think it will happen, but at the same time, I'm just disappointed to have just not heard what I thought was a basic, simple level of condemnation so that we don't let these conspiracy theories go. But I'm curious from you guys, like, am I wrong? And I'm okay if I'm wrong. I genuinely am.
Well, just real quickly, as a Jewish man also, and I always say Jewish because that's really, I'm more culturally Jewish than anything. I agree with everything you said, but I also think that one of the first things you said is they're not representatives of positions of power the way Donald Trump is. And so I felt less alarmed than I have when Trump's done his anti-Semitic dog whistle, so to speak. I think they're just ignorant and they need to be educated, but not talking at all would be a big mistake. because you're right, then it spreads like wildfire. And I've been balancing Black lives and Jewish lives as a group for 50 years almost when I first started playing sports. It needs to be addressed. I just don't. I agree with you that we shouldn't be as alarmed because we're not downtrodden the way Donald Trump wishes things could be for anyone that doesn't look like him. So it needs to be addressed. I also think you have a great point. To steal away from what's happening with Black Lives Matter movements around the country and the world would be a mistake as well. We need to recognize that is happening. There's a tidal wave coming, and we don't want to get in the way of that.
Coach, you're dead on there. And Ben, of course, you're entitled to feel the way you feel. Like there's no wrongness with your feelings. You're 100% right on that. The first thing is that anybody who in 2020 is quoting Adolf Hitler, which by the way, that wasn't even the right quote.
Right, it wasn't even an accurate quote.
Right. So that first, it wasn't attributed to the wrong person. It wasn't even Hitler, right? It was a Farrakhan thing. Anyone who is espousing anything spoken by Adolf Hitler and or Louis Farrakhan, full stop, wrong, out. Like I don't know where you need to be over the past however many years to know those two men completely out. Okay, and so that was 100% wrong, and it was obvious that DeSean was clearly uneducated about it, and then it spread like wildfire with some of the other athletes, DeSean Jackson being among them. Second thing is, part of this is on us as a media culture and as people in general. We need to stop validating celebrity as the leaders of these movements. They are, in fact, not the leaders of this movement. Now, yes, George Floyd was Stephen Jackson's close friend. That is true, but that does not make Stephen Jackson the leader of Black Lives Movement. However, that is what we do in this culture because nothing is of importance or matters until person who is seen on this level does it. Then it's like, oh, Stephen Jackson doing this, and we know that's not it. It's the hundreds of thousands of people, the millions of people protesting, organizing. It's the people who are dying, all the names you know and don't know. It's the everyday people, right? That's who the leaders of this movement are, not Stephen Jackson, not famous person X, famous person Y. They can use their platform to amplify, but they are not the leaders. And we need to stop looking at these people as leaders because, to be frank, they are highly specialized workers, right? Which means they're probably not skilled enough to be leaders of these kinds of movements because their whole life has been about, I've got to be very good at this thing to make it to this level to do this, which means I don't really have much time in my life to do any other things, right? Because I've got to be really good to get one of these.
But let me, not to interrupt. First of all, I don't even think DeSean Jackson, not even just because of the Riley Cooper situation, I don't think he should be suspended. Like, to me, DeSean Jackson is ignorant, needed to be educated. Like I'm not for that. I'm not coming for the heads of anybody, not even Stephen Jackson. What I'm surprised and hurt by is that people like Jamel, who I really genuinely respect, I tangentially know her, right? Were just silent, and it felt like a choice. And it's not just her, and I do not want to put it on her, but she is the intelligent, educated, she is capable. These other media people, right, who are educated, right, are capable. And I just felt like the silence was really deafening, especially the first 24 hours, right? When wrongly attributed or not, I know it was a Farrakhan quote as well, but he thought it was Hitler and the world was still seemingly okay. And I think I was just surprised by how few people decided to make that an issue. But maybe that is just like, but I don't know, because when you have an idiot like Aubrey Huff spout off some racist stuff, like people shut him down left and right, and there's tweets and there's whatever. But maybe I'm just wrong for wanting that, and maybe that's my self-centeredness, and I'm willing to admit that, because again, I stand by the thing that I said to start. I don't want this to become, what about the Jews? Right. This is more, somebody brought hatred to the table, and I'm just asking for the people who fight hatred to also care about that. But maybe that's just wrong.
No, Ben, so here's what I feel. I feel like first of all, thank you for trusting us with you said a lot of stuff, right? That is not the easiest, and I know it means the world to you, and thank you for trusting us with that. But also, I feel like you're close to loving Steven Jackson and being a huge fan. We all saw him with George Floyd's kids. We all saw him talking about George Floyd, right? Like, we want to hug. We're this close to just like the name of the show. We're gonna bring it in with like, you know, he seems like he has a bunch of great qualities, right? And actually, I felt like he was. I'm not an expert on this incident. I did watch part of his apology, and I felt like he was like, oh shit, like I'm like I didn't know. Like I felt like part of him was just like, oh God, if I had known this was going to hurt you like that, I never would have said it, which is obviously an ignorant position to be in, but people get to be ignorant, I guess, right? So, but like, so in my hypothetical thing, your family and Steven Jackson's family are going on vacation together, and you're close to having a great vacation, but somebody has to say, oh, Steven, can we dial it back with the casual Hitler references, right? Like, can we just be a little kinder about, like, can we just and it's just that little brushback was all we were going to need. And you're saying, hey, can we just get that? Can we stand up a little bit for decency here? Right. This doesn't seem like too much to ask to me.
Go ahead, Jarod.
I was going to say, the one thing I will not, I've spent a little bit of time, not a ton, so I want profess to know who Steven Jackson is, but he's a man that really, when he says things, it generally comes from his heart, right? Like it's always emotion with him. And as we are working towards hopefully living in an anti-racist world, we're going to get shit wrong, people. Like it's going to happen. People are going to say things incorrectly, say things the wrong way, and it's going to happen on every side. That's just the nature of how this is going to work. The other thing, again, to Randy had said, a lot of people do see celebrities as leaders. And yeah, but again, and I agree they do. That's our problem, though. We need to stop looking at those people. That's on us. Like, we have to stop. The other I will mention here, Ben, is that you have to, in a way, not be, it's not
be said, understanding why it is he would even get to that point, right? If you've been told your whole life that Black people are these enslaved, lesser than, downtrodden people, and then all of a sudden you hear someone saying, no, you come from a line of kings and queens. You are in fact the chosen people. Like, which side are you going to rock with? You're going to rock with the side that tells you that you're this horrible, supposed to be enslaved, lesser thing, or you're going to go, well, wait a minute. Maybe we're these other things, right? These positive things. No group is going to say, I want to be part of the terrible part. I want the good part, right? And so that's the part where it's easy for some people to get manipulated into getting on board with these horrendous false doctrines like the one from Louis Farrakhan.
But that's why, like I said, I'm actually not mad or even hurt or surprised by Steven and DeSean, right? Like, I understand that. Like, I have a very good friend who was my first friend when I got to that prep school. Black kid, Omar from Newark, like my best friend all through junior high and high school, who went to the Million Man March and marched with Farrakhan. And when I told him some of the stuff that Farrakhan said, he was like, I never knew that really was about Jew. Like, he didn't get it. And so I am not mad. I don't have any bit of problem with Steven and DeSean, because I understand how they can get there. And honestly, I can understand why, to a certain extent, you need those positive belief structures to pull yourself out of situations that were put upon you by other people, right? There's psychology behind what the white oppression does to the psyche of Black people, and it's criminal, right? You're put in a position where people tell you on a daily basis, literally and figuratively, that you're not worth enough. I can't imagine what that does to you, what that feels like. And then
it happened here. Right. The Riley Cooper incident birthed all this.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But the difference to me between the Riley Cooper thing and this is Riley Cooper had hateful intent in his voice. Right. And people made it about the word. I didn't care about the word. I cared about the intent. Even if he had just said, you black guy, I'd have been just as angry, because he had hate. Like, to me, DeSean and Steven were trying to work through.
We've been really fast. I know you got a bigger point, but the Eagles didn't make DeSean feel safe, right? They, like, DeSean's bringing this up now.
Agreed.
Riley got away with it, right? Like, look at me talking about football. It's way dangerous for me.
But I guess what I come down to is the people that I was disappointed or upset with were, again, the highly intelligent, highly academic class of people who have chosen to be the voices of moral authority, who to me, with a simple tweet, can start putting question and doubt into the tens of thousands of people liking what DeSean Jackson says. I agree, we shouldn't have them be celebrities or vocal leaders just because they're an athlete, just because they're this. But at the same time, then we also go, well, how come you don't stand up and use your platform for more good? You have this platform. Like, we send conflicting messages to athletes about what we want, right? And what we expect from them. And I'm just saying that's why I think it's so important that the intelligent people around them, right, let them know when something goes astray so that we signal to the masses why those thoughts are dangerous, not condemn and hate the messenger.
I can't speak to why Jamel didn't say anything, and maybe she will, maybe she won't. I know Bomani did address this on his Tuesday podcast at length. So
yeah, Bomani's great. And his take on it was amazing.
Right. So I don't know why she didn't or chose not to. Maybe she'll address it at some point. Maybe she won't. But it's also that challenge that we have, right? Of now, then all this stuff gets thrust upon us. Now it's like, well, now I've got to go speak out for every, right? And it's to your point about the conflicting message. It's a hard choice for her. Maybe she chose to say silence because she's like, to your point, a lot of people in the Black community don't take anyone from Farrakhan. This is ridiculous. Like, as Bomani says, books with no barcodes on the back. We don't, like, what are you doing? Like, this is ridiculous, right? Like, I don't, like, this is not legitimate scholarly work here. But to your point, I get it. Like, you want to know, how do we maintain and keep our message conflicting? And again, it goes back to what I said before, which is we are trying to move into a society that is anti-racist. That's going to be really fucking hard, okay? And we're going to screw up a zillion times on our way then. And newsflash, none of the people on this call are going to be alive when we get to that anti-racist society, right? But we have to, like, chip, slow, and eventually, maybe like great grandkids, David's great, like they might live in a better world, maybe.
And I do want to just, I do just want to say this because I want to make sure it is clear. I 100%, even in the midst of this ignorant statement, prioritize Black Lives Matter in every which way possible, right? And I also prioritize LGBTQ relations because they have been brutalized. I think that the overwhelming problem with all of this racism that exists in our country, as you're getting to, is you're right. We have some foundational educational problems, which also stem from oppressive systems, right? And that's also what leads poor white folk to follow somebody like Trump, who does not have any interest in them. Right, if that's the beauty of that Black Jeopardy, right, was the idea that, like, when Tom Hanks was on it, like, poor white folk and poor Black folk have more in common than I think poor white folk admit. I think poor Black folk kind of understand it. Now, that doesn't mean that they're equal. That's not what I'm getting at, right? Poor white folks still have it better. But I think if the lower economic people actually saw some of that common oppression that is happening by wealthy people like Trump, who hate the poor, who hate Black people, who hate Jews, I actually think that we would
Suddenly you're on a yacht. There you go. Okay, you're back.
Yeah.
No, Ben,
it undermined your point kind of big time right then, to be on a yacht.
It's capitalist machine. Look, it's very simple to break down. If you think of America and the GDP and all the available money for everybody, simple numbers, we can all get it, is $10, right? And the total population in America was 10 people. Here's how this works. One person in America controls 9 of the $10. The rest of the 9 people are fighting each other for that remaining dollar. That is the problem, right? We have this small group of people who literally control just about everything, but they figured out a way to make sure that the masses, no, I'm not your problem. It's Coke, it's Henry, it's Ben, it's this person down the street. These are the people you're fighting with when it's like, wait. if we all realize, no, it's us. If we get on the same side, we get rid of Jeff Bezos and all these other people. That's our problem. Those people.
I want to make a quick point, which is that when Jarod's in the Poconos and his laptop's on his knees, when he's making a big point, it's like an earthquake. It's like the whole thing is just like shaking. Like, I'm inclined to believe everything Jarod says. The other thing I want to say is that I have $9 and I feel like a king. So thank you for that.
One common theme that we've all been talking about here that's running kind of behind the scenes is battling ignorance. And so when we talk about our impoverished Americans, very often a poor education comes along with that. And it's easy also to point fingers because you're angry and frustrated and hungry and everything else. I had it a little bit easier than the three of you. I grew up when there were still a lot of those that survived the Holocaust were still alive and living in America. And so I wonder if it was every Sunday, but my memory tells me every Sunday during Sunday school growing up at a temple, we had a Holocaust survivor come speak to us. It was a very real thing. I don't know that any black person in America today met as many Holocaust survivors as people of my generation did. I could not watch Schindler's List in the theater. I didn't want to be reminded of those terrible Sundays. And then when I finally did watch it by accident, literally at 1 a.m. when my kids were little, and I just did the 1 a.m. feeding when my twins were little. And the next thing I know it was 4 a.m. and my shirt was soaking wet from crying. I was not aware of a single tear being shed. All of it hit me, all of my memories growing up. And so I've never written about that. I've never talked about that amongst anyone other than just friends and family in my home or something. But this is a time we can educate. It should not be the priority given what's happening in America today with BLM and the virus. But it can be a conversation that should be had with intelligent people led by Jamel and Bamani. And there's amazing rabbis out there and other people, including people of color who know better. Because like the godfather of my twins and his wife, they know better. They were born in Alabama and Gainesville, Florida as a black man or woman, but both have intimate conversations over the years with Jewish people. They know the truth. So the more we can just have conversations about that, prioritize correctly with what's happening in context in America, we'll all be better off for it. That fight, that battle against ignorance needs to be, a priority for us.
I will say, to bring this back to the NBA, I do think one of the interesting things is the blurred line between Jarod's point about unfettered capitalism, which, by the way, you and Waz need to just talk all the time. Just all the time.
Waz is my guy. That's our job.
But is that I think that there is a bit of anger directed at the owners who happen to be Jewish, a lot of them, right? And it getting confused for that being this Illuminati based on religion. You know what I mean? And so that was another reason why I didn't actually have a problem with where some of these feelings were coming from DeSean Jackson, right? When you look at like what the players were trying to get done, and then the narrowed down, and the narrowed down list of like what things they could put on the back of their jersey. Like, come on, like I get it, right? I'd be angry too, right? I face this stuff in my office constantly, right? Where people are like, I'm not going to mention a name, but I got told when my company made a huge donation to Black Lives Matter that there was a bunch of uproar by, and this was like 3 weeks ago, by gay and lesbian community saying, you never did anything for us. Why this? Why now? How, like what about us? And I was like, because the murder and oppression is something that they literally can't hide from. I can hide being Jewish. I can walk in and out of rooms for the most part. Nobody have a clue. For the most part, you can be gay and lesbian and walk in and out of rooms. Black people have been, read the quotes by Nixon, right, about the Southern strategy. It is wild. And so I get it when then you see the people who are making the decisions being like, all right, we're pro Black Lives Matter, except for these 17 words which you can't put on a jersey. But you can put, we white people approve of these 5 words you can put on a jersey. it's just wild. And that's why I understand and I have empathy, as you said, Henry, for Steven Jackson and DeSean for why they ended up there.
There's a little bit, I talk about this too much and it's boring, but this principle of psychology is fundamental attribution error, where like we tend to think that a person is a kind of person who has a certain kind of stuff. And so, the idea is like, is Steven Jackson a leader? It's like, no. Like we're all just giant messes of different circumstances. Steven Jackson that's probably a book he could read. After he read that book, we would like to hear him on the topic, right? Like he didn't have it, right? He didn't do his homework on this one. And so to me, like, it's not so much that he is a kind of person. To me, this underlies everything, right? Like summarizing some political theorizing we were doing, sort of a lot of people are looking for a kind of person to blame for their suffering, right? That leads to all kinds of problems, right? But instead, we're just like, no, look, by and large, people are good and warm-hearted and trying to take care of their kids and do the best they can. If we all kind of feel roughly like that, there's no villain when things are hard in life. It's just hard. Like life's hard. It is. And it doesn't mean that somebody's terrible. It just means crap, We don't have the money we wanted to have, or we don't have the food, whatever, on and on, the opportunity. I think if we build from there, we can build pretty fast.
Can I ask you guys something? Not to allow this one small thing to turn into something else. I want to ask you guys a basketball question. How wild is it going to be next year when the salary cap drops and/or this force majeure clause comes? Because I just want to talk about something not positive, but like kind of not that heavy.
Just a different apocalypse.
Yeah, because I've been talking with multiple writers, NBA Inside people, and the idea that we're just going to come out of this and be fine is an idea held literally only by the White House administration. And that's about it. And I'm really curious what you guys think is going to happen with this tournament, like just predictions. Are they going to finish it? And what's going to happen next year?
Well, I love what, and it's something that Henry, we've talked about on this show, Coach, what in that first clip that Malika is quoting Adam Silver saying, the bubble is designed for a small amount of people to have the coronavirus. If a large amount of people have it, it's going to cost out. Like, well, can you tell us what a large amount is? Like, what is that number? Like, do you have a break point where that's number one. Number two, I mean, I think we're all pretty much in agreement here. We think force majeure is almost assuredly going to happen, right? Which is why the players were like, yeah, Michelle, we know you're going to leave in a year, but like, no, you're staying because we know this next fight we're going to have with the owners is going to be, quote unquote, the fight of our lives, right? Because the owners are going to want to pull back all of the stuff that they gave away in the last negotiation. And they're going to need, the best negotiator and arbitrator on their side to help them get what they want. So I think that it's going to be a protracted fight. And I see it getting ugly. But if I'm the players, I still got to lean on the fact that, we are the talent, right? Like, we are the ones that you come to see LeBron James, Kevin Durant. Like, no one comes to see, our good buddy Tillman Fertitta and all these. No one cares about you. Like,
we don't want his building.
Right.
It's unusable.
And that's the other thing. When is anybody on this call going to feel safe going into a place with 20,000 plus people anytime soon?
It'll be the last thing. It'll be the very last
10?
thing.
Right. How about 10 people?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not taking any chances. When Henry first talked about the whole arena thing, that I had never thought about that before. I can't stop thinking about it now. That ironically, if this works, and it can, and I'm going to mention that just briefly in talking to three guys in the bubble right now, three players. If this works, like, LeBron James is a really smart man. So is Maverick. Like, they're going to be thinking, in a way they never have before. And there's going to be some really, really wealthy billionaire, one billionaire. And he's going to think, hey, let's just build our own place. Hey, Celine Dion does it in Vegas, right? So does every other performer now. They can just live in one city full-time without have to travel and still make as much money as they ever made before. We can do that, and then all of a sudden, game on. Because that will be a hell of a thing where the NBA becomes a destination in and of itself in one little community somewhere in America where they don't have to pay taxes for the state, which is like Florida.
There's I've talked some harsh economics of alternatives to the NBA with NBA people before, and I don't remember the numbers, but they can rattle off like this was years ago, but something like, total combined NBA salaries at that time was like $3 billion, and all overseas leagues together was like $2 billion, let's say, right? And now those NBA salaries have gone up a lot, right? So as long as the numbers are like that, to your question, Ben, like I don't like, there may be. I'm very excited about what Dave was talking about and the potential for just radical rethinking. But I don't think like the only profound change would come from an ABA type thing, right? Where we lose a lot of talent to another league. And as much as the NBA could, I think, lose half of its money and still keep almost everyone, right? And so long as that's the case, like it's going to look something like this, right? Like everyone will just make, people who made, 1.2 million will make 600,000. And
Well, the one thing that if you guys look at what, and I think we talked about this before, what the PLL did, the Professional Lacrosse League, right? Paul Rabel, kind of the LeBron James of lacrosse, got the players on board, created ownership shares, and created a league. Now, there's a little bit of complexity there because your players age out, owners don't typically, right? So the idea of like, hey, like you can't just infinitely have shares for players, but there's ways of working around that, profit shares, all sorts of stuff. But what I'll say, I do kind of agree with David, but to a point is I do think that if you go to a place where you don't need stadiums, right? If that becomes a reality, the idea of a Nike run league, right, becomes an opportunity, a reality, right? The idea of like one major funder going, we're going to sign the top 80 people, top 100 people. Like, good luck, Adidas, competing against us. Like, good luck, Puma, whatever. They're still going to want their players because the eyes are going to be on Kyrie and LeBron and like whatever. But with that being said, the one thing I don't agree with is I don't think they will make definitively what they made before. I still come back to the ratings for basketball show that it is a far more of a reality show than it is a professional sporting league. People follow the players for everything they do around the sport, for a couple of the highlights, right? But for their social media, for everything. And I don't know that the TV ratings would ever yield the amount of money necessary for people to make what they were making before, $45 million a year on basically TV revenue.
Well, you're not going to earn it.
Reality show, Ben, where we actually follow them around houses and have camera crews follow them around. Then it'll make the ratings money.
Yeah, that's
fair. And Ben, you're thinking very smartly about how the league actually earns back what it pays the players, right? But there's the greater fool theory, right? Like maybe you just need somebody to come along with $10 billion and say, I'm in. Then everybody makes their money, right? Like if some Amazon.
It seems easy, but look at the AAFL and how quickly it folded, and yet their ratings were more than NBA regular season games, right? Now, granted, again, different player structure, the amount of teams, players you need, et cetera. But I'm just saying plenty of billionaires have tried to start pro sports leagues, and it becomes really challenging.
Right. So, but I guess I would say people have been buying NBA rights for a long time at inflated prices, and they have been losing money on it for a long time, right? The right to lose money, like Amazon might decide it's willing to lose that money, and then everyone will say the league's a success, even though Amazon won't share their books, right? Like that's the thing that could happen. It's a real possibility, right? If these games they could have a huge Google deal, and everyone has Fat City money, and it's up to Google to figure out if that makes money or not. Like, do we know right now that ESPN's making money on this? That Turner's making money on this, right? Ben probably knows better than anyone, but it's not actually a requirement for the league that their media partners are solvent.
True.
Hey, so one thing I'll say, I'm writing about this today. We wrote about trust, how important it is for these players to trust each other in a way like never before because of the potential consequences. But in talking to guys inside the bubble now who are only just now getting out, depending when they arrive, they are definitely confident and supremely focused on not messing up. There's still a lot they don't know because they're just now getting out. They don't like the food. And people are writing how spoiled they are. They're not bitching that much. They're bored. But most of these players grew up eating worse than how they're eating now, and they get it. I found players to be so much more humble typically than the average friend I have in my neighborhood. They're cognizant of how lucky they are. So they're not staying in the Four Seasons they'd like to. As one player said to me, Coach, I'd be sick of the Four Seasons after 55 days. Like, they understand that they're not home, period, end of story. But they don't want to be the one to mess up. The question will be, what's it like in 40 days when they're still there? And many of them are just getting started with the playoffs at that point, right?
Agreed.
That'll be if they're going a little stir crazy. But now, and the NBA, I can only speak for a couple of teams, they're definitely reminding them constantly of how fragile this is. This opportunity to make the money that you guys both said this. They all want to make their money. There's plenty of guys making league minimum that are, half the league almost in these games are close enough to that, and they're taking care of family members beyond themselves. And they pay lots of different taxes and everything else. They don't want to mess this up. I hope it lasts. That grit, that resiliency they need, and they'll need some leadership to do it, which is something we, in a sense, kind of allude to in our article coming out today.
Hey, guys, unfortunately, I got to drop. I got dad duties.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the platform.
Say hi to Duke.
Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Henry,
Thanks, Ben.
There's Duke. What's up, buddy?
That snitching hotline, Ben. Henry.
Wait, what now?
We got to monitor that snitching hotline. That's the thing we got to listen to. We got to see after 45 days who's called into the snitch hotline.
Yeah, they're gonna get so crazy for sure. Then they've got these bands. One player told me yesterday. I did a Zoom call with him, and he showed me his green band, whatever that means, but it's green.
He's just quarantined.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He can't leave he told me I can't even leave the room. He's almost. I think today they're out, but they don't want to mess up.
2 days of negative tests, and then you're already going.
And then you trade it. Well, Malika explained on Brian Windhorst's podcast that you trade in your green band for, in her case, a credential, and then the monitor, an Aura ring, right, which is monitoring her temperature and heart rate to see early signals of the infection, and then also an alarm that goes off if someone comes too close. Those technology things are optional for the players, though.
Really?
Yeah. Do you think they'll do it?
They don't like that stuff. Most of them are going to be like, I don't want you monitoring anything that I'm doing outside of a basketball court. So no. But I know we talked a little bit offline, and I don't know if you want to share or if you don't want to. Your thoughts around, Malika seems to be the only ESPN person that is front and center down there.
It's an opportunity, right? For sure. I was a little bit as he was talking to Brian Windhorst, Brian had said earlier, basically, I'm not going in there. The implication being it was way too scary. He didn't think it was safe enough, right? But part of me was ooh, this is a tricky position to take. Is it's not safe enough, but it is safe enough for other people. I'm not. I don't want to put Brian on the spot here, but I was just this is just tricky. A lot of sports writers have said oh man, looks really iffy. Anyway, 9 rebounds in the second half, and I'm it's if you don't think these humans are safe, how are we talking about rebounds? It just feels a little. Anyway, I trust it'll be okay. I know Malika sounds like she's being incredibly careful, and she can control her destiny or something, right?
One player told me that they might open. He thinks they're going to open up Disney at night. Disney does that all the time, by the way.
Yeah, there was a memo published about this. Yeah.
Okay, so that's I'm not surprised. And he feels hey, compared to what's out there in places like Florida and Texas and a lot of Arizona, there's less of a chance I'm going to get it. I may get it, but there's a whole lot less people inside the bubble. And that's what I said. Well, what about the people going home every day? He's like, well, they're not in our rooms when we're there. That could be problematic for sure. That's going to be where it breaks down, is they're not able to handle that one part. And no one that I've seen, and I know we have to go, has been challenging people in Orange County, please wear masks wherever you go so we can lower the virus count, so we can actually get back to playing at least this one sport. We're not being challenged and inspired to do that at all. Just those of us that are cognizant are doing it.
And Devin, I don't know if the jump's going to be down there just because that's a studio show and the amount of people required for that. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Be safe, please.
Thanks, guys.